Good morning and welcome to AV12. The shift has hit the fan. Well, it's Sunday, the 4th of September 2022. We're a little bit after 9 o'clock, a few little gremlins in the studio as usual, but we're delighted that Alternative View is back. And this has only been able to happen due to a huge amount of work by the Alternative View team. So I'm going to mention people by name a little bit later, but a small number of people doing a huge amount of work to give us this live stream event today. And of course, this is the start of Alternative View moving forward to getting back into proper venues where people can be together to enjoy their company, each other's company, and of course, hear some great speakers. So I'm going to say a big thank you to the audience, everybody who's bought a ticket to join us today. Wherever you are in the world, you have made this happen as well, and we're delighted to see you. Now, I'm going to introduce a lady who has also been a powerhouse behind the scene, and that's Nicola Crane, daughter of the famous Ian Crane. And Nicola, of course, has been one of the people very, very keen to see Alternative View up and running and to continue in her father's memory the great work that he did. So I'm going to say straight away, Nicola, thank you very much for joining us today.
Thank you, Brian. Thank you for helping make this happen today.
Well, it's been wonderful how it's come together. We've had a few little snurglies, I'm going to say, but that always happens. But finally, we're here and we're live. So I'm going to say to you, what would you like to say to the audience today, really in memory of your father, and probably a little bit of opinion from your point of view as to how you saw his events? What sort of impact did they make on you?
I think his events had a huge impact, not just on me, but on everybody that attended, really. I remember the first one years ago, our first ever AV event in Totnes Town Hall, how much it's grown over a decade now. What always really touched me was seeing so many people come together from all over the country, all over the world, all different backgrounds, and they all found that they all had this common interest. They were all questioning what was happening in the world. Everybody was trying to find answers, and everyone just sharing their information, knowledge, wisdom that they'd come across. And they found that it was a safe space to share ideas and thoughts that were different to what we see in the mainstream media. And what always touched me was really just that it was a place of safety for everybody. There was no judgment. Everybody was free to discuss what they thought. They made new friends. And I remember at many conferences, people saying to me how they've just never experienced any place like it. They didn't have in their circle beforehand. They'd never met people where they could so openly discuss these different ideas with absolutely no judgment. And that was what I always loved about the conference. And I think what was so important to my dad as well.
Well, Nicola, that's a really wonderful statement, and I'm smiling because you've made my job easier already today, because you've covered the key thing, haven't you, which was alternative view, putting forward alternative views, but people being able to put their views forward, total free speech, and amongst company, usually amongst company where everybody was all there together. No divisions, but plenty of discussion, because quite often people could disagree but still be enjoying the whole event itself. Now, you've spent a bit of time overseas, I believe, in Australia. You're now back. Well, are you back in UK? Where are you at the moment?
So I'm in Guernsey at the moment. It's certainly been a different last sort of 18 months than we had planned. So we moved to Australia actually in May 2019. We made it back to England in February 2020 to see Dad, and luckily made it back to Australia about 2 weeks before the whole pandemic hit and lockdowns and everything truly hit. We were incredibly fortunate that the end of 2019, November 2019, Dad came out to Australia. We had a fabulous time together, did a lot of traveling. Obviously, a lot of the theme today is inspired by Dad's interest in ancient wisdom, ancient knowledge. So we had a great time doing a lot of traveling, looking into and learning about Aboriginal wisdom and lore and dream time. So that was really fantastic. He loved it out there. The plan was to stay out there. But after the pandemic and the border closures, it was just too difficult. It was a heartbreaking time because obviously I couldn't make it back to England early last year. We were allowed to leave Australia, but we weren't being permitted to return. And Dad was hoping we would stay out there, but it just became too difficult. So last year in November, we made a decision to come back to the UK so we could see our family, and we're now in Guernsey. So I'm working in Guernsey at the hospital out here, and so far it's beautiful.
Okay, Nicola, that's really excellent. I did want to ask you whether you managed to meet Crocodile Dundee. There are several people, or many people actually, who are saying with the current events in Australia, things have obviously got very tough over there. They wish Crocodile Dundee would appear to stand up for the people in Australia. Do you think people in Australia are capable of standing up for themselves against what seems to be tyranny?
I think they are. What makes it difficult, though, is with the system, the states are so independent from each other. We were incredibly fortunate that we were in Queensland. So really the hard lockdowns were Melbourne. Melbourne looked like they really struggled. That was really tough. We were quite rural. We were 4 hours north of Brizzy from Brisbane. So that did make it for us. It was kind of a more gentle. We didn't really have any massive lockdowns. It was just the border closures. So even for Australia, although the international borders were closed, the state borders were closed. So my neighbours were all from New South Wales, from Victoria. Nobody could see their families. You couldn't even get from Brisbane to Sydney to Melbourne. So it wasn't just me feeling it with my family in the UK. It was all Australians. It was a really, really big impact. No one could see their grandchildren, their family across other states either.
Right. Well, fascinating. We're going to be talking about, obviously, about many events in the world today. Australia come in for a tough time. You've escaped. You seem happy where you are, so that's really lovely. What we're going to do now is just show some film clips, which are little tributes to your father. And these are some of the memories that people have had, people who've known Ian or were speakers at his events. So let's see what they have to say.
Hello, I'm Andy Thomas, and I'm standing here in the village of the old prisoner in the 1960s. This is Portmeirion, of course, in Wales, but it's apt because I just want to briefly pay my little tribute to Ian Crane. Ian was an old friend of mine. He was somebody that believed that we were at risk of being prisoners, and he fought against it. He wouldn't accept that, and he spent many years fighting for freedom against what he saw as people trying to find their private fiefdoms. And I would like to say here that there's not that many people that really put their money where their mouth is. Ian did. He went out there, he fought for what he believed was right, and he went out there and sacrificed much to do that. Wound up living on a camp instead of in luxury as he could have done had he chosen. He opposed fracking, he stood up for many things, and at the end of the day decided he didn't want to live under a global control agenda. So if we are all living in a global village, well, thanks to Ian, maybe it's been held back rather more than it might have been. I'm honoured to say I played a little bit of Ian's history. I bumped into him after I gave a talk at the school at which both our children went to at that point, and he was intrigued by what I was talking about. We realised we had something in common and got chatting, and every morning we would have playground discussions about the global agenda. And in the end, I realised he had a lot to say. Asked him to come and speak for our group, the Changing Times group, and soon got him to speak at the Glastonbury Symposium. And before you knew it, he'd taken off and he created the alternative view, and found a voice, and just to have played a very small part in that is something I'm very honoured to have been part of. I miss him. I wish there was more like him, and we all need to take a tip from Ian R. Crane. Get out there and fight for what we believe is right. Never just sit on your hands. If you feel strongly about something, go out there and do it. And maybe we won't. We'll wind up living in the eternal global village.
What can you say about someone who had nothing but gave everything? That was Ian Crane. I remember back in 2009, 2010, Ian and I would travel around in his used van to give speeches in Western England, and it was quite the experience. We would stop at dodgy places to eat pub food. We would travel to different places, stay in people's homes. Sometimes Ian told me that he slept even in the van. This was Ian Crane. But most of all, he was a messenger of good. He talked to people about freedom and what it was like to stand up for yourself and not be trodden upon by the elite. Again, this was Ian. But I think one of the things I like most about Ian is that he was the midwife of the National Health Federation in the UK, or NHF UK. And this wouldn't have happened except for Ian Crane, not to mention all the other marvelous things that he did. He will be very sorely missed by many people.
Ian Crane counted the cost of his involvement in the truth media like few others. He actually took a sabbatical from his then employer, Schlumberger, to work out what the consequences were of his revised view of the world. And at the end of it, he told his boss he was going to take another sabbatical, this one unpaid. And he knew that he was never going to be a wealthy man again. In fact, he was content with very little in the years when most of us knew him towards the end of his life. And that made him a free man, free to think what he thought right, to say what he thought right, to invite people to address alternative view, not because of who they were, but because of what they honestly had to say. Free to be very compassionate, very generous, of his time, his insights, and his money, and free to be a doughty defender of the oppressed. My favourite memory of him, actually, is of him being accosted by a van full of Nottinghamshire's not very finest when he was doing one of his classic broadcasts from the fields during the fracking campaign. And he got them all back in the van with their tails between their legs by the simple expedient of calling out, with a smile on his face, because that was Ian's way, "This is the Melanie Shaw Police Force, ladies and gentlemen." May his memory be blessed, and may we live up to the standards that he set us.
Hello, I am Georgia Pouliquin. I am a French whistleblower about police brutality, especially on yellow vests, and I made a speech on AV10 several years ago, and I wanted to share a memory with you about our beloved Ian Crane. When I was in trouble in France because of a policeman who frightened me and I had to run away to UK, Ian was one of the fantastic people who helped me. And one day he invited me to talk on Crane Report in Plymouth, and Linda Tyre was there, and David too, and that was before her extradition to France. And that was the first time I met her, thanks to Ian. And I think he did it purposely because he knew that I could be able to help her in France. And that's what I did. After her imprisonment, Linda needed to change her lawyer. That was very difficult, and I helped her. My attorney, Olivier Fauré, became her attorney, and as everyone knows, he made her released from prison on January last year. And on this incredible day, Ian called us. I was with Trevor, Linda's brother, and we were on the way to the prison to pick up Linda. And Trevor told him that Linda was free, and Ian was so happy. He was overwhelmed by emotion. He was crying. That was so important to him because he fought so strongly to help her and to help David too. That was an amazing moment that we shared with him, and that was heartbreaking too, because it was the last time I talked to him. But I am so grateful that he got this good news about Linda before he died, so he could rest in peace. Without him, I wouldn't have met Linda, and Olivier Fauré couldn't have helped her. He was so generous and kind, and he remains an inspiration for all of us. So thank you, Ian. Merci, Ian.
Hello conference, it's Michael Feely here. I'm just doing this short video by way of a tribute to a person that we all hold in very high regard, and that is Ian R. Crane. Sometimes we meet people or come across people who have an extremely positive impact on us, and Ian was such a person. I met Ian on a number of occasions, whether at Edge Media or whether at his talks, and he really was an ambassador for the re-emergence of truth. Often when we lose someone, we don't realise their value until it's gone. And we will all miss Ian, and whatever memories you have of Ian, treasure them. On a planet that is 6.4 billion years old, as we are told, we're all fortunate enough to live in the same time and space as Ian R. Crane. So I hope you'll all join me in this tribute and say thank you, Ian, for all that you did. And wherever you are now, whatever dimension you are in, thank you. It was a pleasure to know you, and continue the good work. You take care. Bye-bye.
Well, there we are. And Nicola, I'm going to say to you, just lovely to have people coming forward to speak such nice words about your father. But of course, he touched so many people. He changed my life dramatically. From the first Alternative View talk that I did, my life was never the same again. But a little story for today. I don't normally have a problem putting talks together, but I was struggling a bit on this one. I took the dog for a walk one morning. I was in the field. The cows were in the other field, but I was in the field. And I said, "Come on, Ian, give me some help on this one." Well, nothing happened, but during the next night's sleep, I woke up a couple of times with things going through my mind, and eventually I got up and I jotted down what I thought I wanted to say on the back of an envelope. In the morning, I had a look at those jottings and I was pleased. I had something to give today, but what made me smile was, what was the envelope? Well, it was Vision Express. And I think somebody was trying to tell me something there. So, Nicola, just 30 seconds and we'll move on to the main program. But thank you very much for coming on today. We're going to say wonderful to have such nice tributes to your father. And I hope you will also enjoy Alternative View today.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for the tributes. It's a joy to listen to them and just to be reminded about so much of the great work that he did and what an impression he made on so many people. I know today's event is inspired by his interest and love of ancient wisdom. So hopefully we can go forward and work together and together try to rediscover some of this lost knowledge.
Okay, lovely. Thank you very much. Thank you. Well, for our audience today, a little tiny bit of housekeeping before we start the event proper. The first thing I've got to say is that each speaker has the opportunity for questions. So if you have a question for speakers, email in to questions@alternativeview.co.uk. We will try and pick those up and we'll try and include at least some of them in the conversations we have with speakers after their talk. I'm just going to reinforce the fact that Alternative View from here on will be held as Alternative View events, and the aim is to get those hotel events going again. And the aim is to keep the thing as broad as possible. So we're going to be very inclusive on topics and who can come in to speak. And I'm just going to say again, this would only be possible today Well, this would not be possible today without the tremendous work that a very small team has managed to produce. And we've got Lisa, we've got Matthew, we've got John, and we've got Mike Robinson in particular, taking on the burden of the organisation for the event itself, and of course all the IT bits and pieces. Right, I'm going to stop there. I'm going to regroup, get my brain back into speaker mode, and I'll be opening with my presentation very shortly. Do have a look at the overall information on the day and speakers, which you can find on the Alternative View website. It gives you full details about that. I think we might have a slide which we can pop on screen here.